got the idea from this video from a video I saw about a month ago from a history traveler about where Lewis and Clark wintered. Well, that was the winter that they wintered back east before they started out. And I thought, okay, well, let's do one on where they wintered when they got out here. So yeah, I think it's JD at History Traveler. And I'll link that video in the description probably. So here's a good map. Salt works are down here in Seaside. Here's Fort Clatsop. Here's the town of Astoria. Here's Cape Disappointment. There's Dismal Nitch. There's Station Camp. And we'll go check those out later. But they were down here on this water. And there is a trail that you can take that walks you all the way down to the beach from here. So anyway. So yeah. Lewis and Clark expedition spent the winter of 1805 and 1806 here. They started out coming in up here, decided that was not a great place to winter. So they came across and came here, built a fort. Okay, we're at the top of the hill in Astoria. This is a start of a video to look around out here at the mouth of the Columbia where Lewis and Clark were in the winter of 1805 to 1806. Stick with us, it's going to be interesting. So here's the view from here. There's the Astoria Bridge. Straight out that way is the ocean. You can see the ocean out there. You get the Oregon side and you get the Washington side. Over here on this side of where the bridge meets Washington is a place called Dismal Nitch, which we're going to go to. Check it out, where they got stuck for a few days. And then around the corner is a place called Station Camp, where they camped for a while. And they sent a small expedition out to Cape Disappointment, which is out there. Now, this area was known to the world because ships would come in here and trade with the Indians. And Lewis and Clark were counting on, well, they were hoping for being able to replenish supplies from some of those trading ships. They decided after that camp that they would come over here, and off in there is where Fort Clatsop is, where they spent the winter. They built a fort on Clatsop land. So here's a book that's pretty interesting. I'm gonna read from this book what the author says about the area. The expedition was encamped on the northern branch of the river, the Washington shore, which proved to be an acutely unfavorable region. There was little game, and the thought of living on dried fish and the flour made from arrowhead root was abhorrent, even if there had been enough trade goods to buy them with. Furthermore, prolonged dampness had rotted the party's clothes, moccasins, and robes, which were used as blankets, and hides were needed to replace them. Where should the winter post be built? Clark disliked the seacoast. Saltwater I view as an evil as much as it is not healthy, and would have liked to go back up the Columbia to the Dalles. That was out of the question, however, for they must not fortify whatever chance there was for encountering a ship that was engaged in the northwest trades. From such a ship, they could replenish their supplies and equipment and could secure a stock of trade goods for the eastward journey. One ship came into the Columbia River and passed their campsite on the Washington shore soon after they abandoned it. The Indians who visited the new post carefully refrained from telling them of its presence and did not tell the ship's captain that the expedition was in the vicinity. Here, the south of Columbia River, inland from the coast, they built a post which they called Fort Clatsop for the nearest neighboring tribe. It was a log stockade 50 feet square, a row of 3 cabins facing one of the 4, with a parade ground 20 feet wide between them. It was completed on January 1. That would have been 1806, and there were showers or steady rain every day while they were being built. Okay, we've moved to the north side of the river. You can see the Astoria Bridge over there, and you can see the column right up there. And this location is called Dismal Nitch. Let me read a little bit about this location. Miserable and soaked to the skin, the Corps of Discovery has followed the shoreline from Gray's Bay, Shallow Bay, in the journals, for 2 days in an attempt to round the modern-day Point Ellis, which is off to our right. At this point in the journey, they had run out of fresh food and their clothes were quite literally rotting away. Getting around Point Ellis, distress in the journals, would have allowed them to meet up with one of the last trading ships of the season and refresh their supplies. What the Corps didn't realize, however, was that it was about to run into some of the journey's most treacherous moments. A fierce winter storm forced the Corps off the river on November 10th and pinned the group to the North Shore Cove, consisting of little more than a jagged rocks and a steep hillside. That'd be this location right here. Captain William Clark named the dreary spot that dismal little niche. For 6 stormy days, the group was trapped by fierce winds and high waves at the rocky shoreline. For only the second time in the expedition, Clark said he was concerned for the safety of the Corps. It would be 5 days later, on November 15th, that a break in the weather finally allowed the men to move forward. And we'll leave it at that. So this is Dismal Nitch. Well, we've moved west around the point down there. This place is called Station Camp, also Middle Village. So they've done a nice little interpretive trail here. And here's an old church that has no power in it, that I believe they still use. So I'm going to read about Station Camp here. It would be 5 days later, on November 15th, that a break in the weather finally allowed the men to move forward. Once the wind and river calmed, Clark ordered the canoes loaded as quickly as possible, and the Corps was able to make it around Point Ellis, the stress in the journals. They landed on a sandy beach where they established Station Camp. They missed the trading ship, but eventually achieved their exploration goals. The Corps spent 10 days here, but used Middle Camp as a departure point for an overland trek to their first view of the Pacific Ocean and the exploration of the area. Historians call the spot Station Camp because it was Clark's primary survey station to produce a detailed and accurate map of the mouth of the Columbia River and surrounding area. This was the most detailed and accurate map he made during the entire trip. On November 24th, 1805, the explorers desperately needed a winter campsite, one rich with game and near friendly tribes who would trade for supplies. To assist in deciding where the Corps should winter, the captain took solicitations of every individual, including York, who was the enslaved man, and Sacagawea. The majority chose to cross to the south of the Columbia River near modern-day Astoria, Oregon, and build winter quarters, which soon would be known as Fort Clatsop. So yeah, I'm going to dub over this because the original audio got garbled. But anyway, up there in the trees, there's a bluff, and it was allegedly the place where Lewis first eyed the Pacific Ocean when he came exploring while they were in Dismal Nitch. So yeah, it's right here. A noble landmark of the Pacific Northwest, Cape Disappointment was already named by the time Lewis and Clark reached the site in November 1805. The first known documentation of the site was in 1775 by Spanish explorer Heceta. Meriwether Lewis laid eyes on the area in mid-November 1805. He proceeded on by land while the rest of the expedition sheltered in Dismal Nitch. He returned to camp on November 17th, and Patrick Glass wrote in his journal, "They had been around the bay and seen where white people had been in the course of the summer, but they had all sailed away. For this reason, Cape Disappointment had a different, unhappy meaning to the men of the Corps." Cape Disappointment was named because they thought the bay was a bay, not the entrance to a river. So that's how it got its name. Okay, we're here at Cape Disappointment State Park at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. The upstairs of this is about Cape Disappointment. The downstairs is about Lewis and Clark. We're gonna head on downstairs and check it out. There they are. This traces the whole route in this exhibit, which prairie dog. Nobody had seen a prairie dog until they found a prairie dog, and they captured one alive and sent it back. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of detail on this stuff here. This is where they spent the first winter. I think that's North Dakota. And then they came out here. There's a nice depiction of the keel boats that came up the Missouri on. Missouri breaks. Great Falls. I heard something that it took them a month to portage around the Great Falls, which I thought was interesting. Get their canoes and all their gear. September in the snow in the Bitterroot Mountains. So they got from the Bitterroot Mountains in 1805, September. By November they were here at the mouth of the Columbia. Great Falls of Columbia River. Silo Falls. So they have a movie here too that you can go in and watch. In there. Here's information about Dismal Nitch. It's one of their maps. We're up here. This is where the bridge crosses today. Station camp. It's another good map replica there. Fort Clatsop. There's our prairie dog again, I think. And after they got here and spent the winter, in March of 1806, they had to retrace their route all the way back. So here we are at the Lewis and Clark Salt Works in Seaside. Build a fire underneath and boil up the salt water. See what this plaque says. On January 2nd, 1806, the Salt Works was established by the three salt makers of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Much of the Corps' stay on the north coast was spent securing sustenance for the winter and provisions for the trip home. On December 28, 1805, Lewis and Clark expedition sent out a detachment of 5 men in search of a good place to make salt. The expedition, which had been wintering at Fort Clatsop, had run out and were desperate need of more. Salt was important for meat preservation, thus for the crew's survival on the trip back home. The rivers near the fort weren't salty enough, so a better place had to be found. The men found an ideal spot on the Pacific Ocean approximately 15 miles from Fort Clatsop, where they set up a salt processing camp. Making salt required a bit of planning and a lot of work. Salt water had to be collected and allowed to sit till the sand sank to the bottom. Then the men had to collect large supplies of firewood and build a stone furnace, on top of which they placed 5 kettles that had to boil 24 hours a day to produce salt. Captain William Clark and a few additional men joined the others at the salt works a little over a week later, on January 9th, arriving in the early afternoon. The group stayed at the salt works until February 20th, when they left with 3.5 bushels, or 28 gallons, of excellent, fine, strong white salt. So here we are. If you want to come visit this place, it's in Seaside, Oregon, on Lewis and Clark Way. The ocean's out there. It's like half a block from the ocean, in a neighborhood. I don't know why they didn't just borrow the salt from one of these houses. Okay, so here we are at Fort Clatsop, and we're going to check this out. This is a recreation of the fort that was here in the woods. It's down this way, and it's not the original fort, but it's on the original location. So anyway, stick with us. Look at the size of that tree. I think that's a spruce tree. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there's the fort. And there's a lot of people here today, so I don't know how good a video I'll get. But the Lewis and Clark expedition spent the winter of 1805 and 1806 here.
Oh, we just found Kevin.
Yeah, we can go in all of them. Yep.
I'm having in the first.
That's great.
I don't know how much we can see in here. I have to get out my other camera.
Hold on, he's trying to show me something. What are you trying to show me, dude?
There's another big one. So I don't know if you can see it, but The river's down that way. We're inside the visitor center. And they've got lots of stuff to look at. So this is on Clatsop tribe land. And they actually asked for permission from the Clatsop people, chief, if they could build their winter fort here. There's an example of one of the canoes the Indians had. Now, as I was reading about this, I guess they stole one of the canoes from the Indians because they needed another canoe to head back with. So, you know, what can you say? But yeah, there's lots of stuff to look at here in this visitor center. It's a nice exhibit about York, who was a black slave that came with them. Here's a full map of their journey. Well, that'll just about cover it for all the sites around the mouth of the Columbia River, where Lewis and Clark spent the winter of 1805 and 1806 before heading back in the spring. Thanks for watching.